Depends on what happens after. I have to be quite more. This week to see what's happening.
Good morning. If we can get everybody seated, please.
It's supposed to start at 9.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for Tea and Story Time with the Sisters of Charity. My name is Casey Bowser. I serve as the archivist for the Sisters of Charity at Seton Hill University. I am pleased to be with all of you this morning. We have a mixed audience of alumni, students, and of course, Sisters of Charity with us today. Some of us are joining together at Caritas Christi, and others are viewing through a live stream. We are so glad you could all be here today for this event as part of Alumni Weekend. We have the pleasure of being joined by some very special guests who will introduce themselves in just a few moments. I will serve as our moderator. Our panelists include a few Sisters of Charity near and dear to our hearts: Sister Grace Hartzog, Sister Victoria Marie Gripshaw, Sister Vivian Lee Heller, and Sister Louise Grundish. Thank you all so much for being with us today to share your stories. So please, Sister Grace, if you would introduce yourself.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to all of our viewers. I'm Sister Grace, and I began my career at Seton Hill following graduation in 1972. And I wore many hats. I began in the psychology department in the Child Development Center, and then moved to the education department, and then eventually campus ministry and dean of students. And then I completed my career teaching child psychology and other psychology courses. I now currently serve on the Board of Trustees and am honored to represent the Sisters of Charity, who love Seton Hill as I do.
Good morning, I'm Sister Victoria Marie Gripshaw, and unlike Grace, I didn't start at Seton Hill there as early as she did. I started at Seton Hill as an undergraduate student in 2 days after I graduated from high school in 1960. And then in the middle of my first semester, went down during the retreat and said to Sister Victoria, I'm on the teaching plan, but I would like to become a Sister of Charity. And she said, well, what are you waiting for? And so I entered the community in January of '61 and was sent out to teach at the end of the semester, and did not go to teach at Seton Hill until 1974, after I had a master's degree in home economics education. I taught at Seton Hill then until 2018, with 3 years off to do my doctoral work. And during that time, I changed from home economics when it closed that department and created the business department and taught and was chair of the division of social sciences. And that included all the business programs.
Good morning, I'm Sister Vivian Lee Heller, and I also had a long career at Seton Hill. I started there in 1965 as the assistant to the Dean of Women, who is Zoe Dorsa. We came in like two babes in the woods. So for those of you whose rooms I check twice a week for dust bunnies and unmade beds, I'm sorry, but that was my job. So after that, I moved on. I taught high school for a year, then I went away and did my graduate work at Tufts University, came back and taught in the French department for a number of years, became the academic dean from 82 to 89, came over to this side of the hill and was on to 2 councils, went back over there, was the associate dean for graduate studies, came back over here, was 10 years as a provincial, And I ended my career at Seton Hill being the Vice President for Mission and Identity in 2019, I think I left. So I've been in and out a lot of times, but I love the place, and I think this is going to be fun.
Good morning. I'm Sister Louise, and unlike the others, my career at Seton Hill was very limited. I did spend about 3 months as the nurse at Seton Hill in 1959 as a new graduate nurse. And during that time, I taught Saturday school, and I also finished up Sister Agnes Treese's nursing course, which I knew nothing about, nor did the students, because we were very much babes in the woods. But I have been in touch with Seton Hill through my many years. I've been on the board twice, and I'm finishing my stint on the board next year as the board secretary. And I do love Seton Hill. Unfortunately, because I'm a nurse, and at that time there was no nursing at Seton Hill, I went to Duquesne, so I'm kind of an outsider looking in, but I think I've been very loyal to the university, and I do love Seton Hill, and I work hard for it, so I'm glad to be here.
And as my colleague in the archive, Sister Louise, knows a lot of stories of the sisters at the university as well, so I'm sure she'll share some of those. Well, let's dive right in and ask a really tough question that I know will not have a single answer. And any of you sisters, please feel free to respond. What is your favorite memory of your time at Seton Hill? It's a tough one.
Definitely Christmas on the Hill. I think that's probably everybody's favorite. But when I was in Zoe's office, and that job really was the weirdest job I've had in my career. I was in charge of dining orders and ID cards and keys, and it just was a crazy job. But anyhow, Christmas on the Hill was very nice. And in the beginning, the sisters decorated the dining room with nothing like Darren's. Nothing like Darren's decorations, but they were simple, but they were lovely. And then the sisters, by and large, were the servers of the dinner in those early days. So that was always a favorite memory of mine.
I have lots of memories about Seton Hill, but I think the one memory that comes back to me primarily because Sister Susan just recently died. But when I first came back from West Virginia University with my master's degree, and I was preparing to teach after teaching 8th grade for so long, everybody was asking me favors. And Susan came out of her office one day and she said, "Vicki, will you do me a favor?" And I said, "How long?" And she said, 4 years. And that was when I became the advisor for the class of 1978. 1974, there's one. And that class was what Barbara Smoko and I were the advisors for 1 year, and then Barbara was sent out on mission, and I had them for 4 years. And that class still keeps in touch with me. They even have their own Facebook page. And we keep in touch all the time over that Facebook page. It was also, that gave me an opportunity to get to know students in a different way than being an instructor. That was the beginning of four different classes that I advised. Anybody else, Grace?
Well, I have many, and Christmas on the Hill was going to be my first, but I do have another. And that is when I was director in the Child Development Center. And I always see that time in my life as the best of both worlds, because we had the 3- and 4-year-olds, but then we had the college students who came and did their practicums. But we were trying to get early childhood certification from the State Department. And so I recall Sister Morris who was the head of the psych department and very instrumental in trying to get the Senate with the faculty to move us forward. And we had an opportunity to get it, and we had a state visitor come to the Child Development Center to see what was going on campus. And I was reading to a group of children, 4 and 3-year-olds, and she was in the room watching and observing, and one of the little ones said, "You look just like the lady in Romper Room." And with that, all of the college students burst into laughter. The woman, I thought, will never get certification, but we did, and we're very proud of our programs that have continued at Seton Hill in many ways and have grown significantly.
Another favorite memory of mine was I got to stay up on Friday nights to see every chicken channel in, make sure every student was in her room. And on special dance nights, you were allowed to stay out until 1:45. And I had to get up the next day and go to Saturday school at 9. But anyhow, that was fun. And I had many student friends who would stay up with me, and after midnight we would order pizza, and so that was fun. And my bedroom was the top of the Canterbury steps there, right in there. And my name was Louise Vincent in those days, and my friends would stand outside and say, "Lovey, are you in there?" It's fun.
As I said, I wasn't there very often, but when I spent a little time as the nurse at Seton Hill, they had 2 flu epidemics. One, I was called over from Assumption Hall to be the nurse. And the students were very sick for a week. But it seemed on Friday night, they were having a big dance. And amazingly, every one of them got well, got out of bed, and went to the dance. I was exhausted because I had spent the whole week with them, but they did not miss the dance. So I'd say Seton Hill students knew what they wanted to do at that time, and they did it. So I did enjoy the time I spent there, really, the little bit of time.
I was advisor for the class of 2000. And in 2000, they decided, because it was the millennial year, that they should do something special. And so they put glass jars all over campus and asked people to put their extra pennies in. And because they did that, they were able to endow the Millennial Scholarship, which they said they wanted to give only to those who were class officers or student government officers, because they're the students who can't get jobs off campus. And every year I get letters from the students who have received that scholarship, thanking me for having that class do that for them.
Well, let's open this up to the audience a little bit too. I know we have some sisters here who also were at the university or are currently at the university, and some alums. So do you have a favorite memory of your time at Seton Hill? Sister Anita, I'll come bring this to you.
Thank you. My favorite memory goes back to the 60s. Let me see, when did it start? I had just got finished spending 3 days at a Montessori school. 3 days. And I came home, and I just couldn't believe, I still couldn't believe all the things that I saw. But anyway, the next morning, I get, Sister wants to see you down in her office. I thought, well, what do they do now? So anyway, I went down to the office, and she finally looked at me and she said, would you like to teach Montessori? Well, I just collapsed in my chair, and I said, oh, just give it to me. And so I went into training, and how many years later, I was still teaching Montessori. Thank God. Thanks.
Thank you, Sister Anita. Anybody else? Sister Maureen.
kind of like to speak for the present. I currently serve as, upon Sister Vivian's retirement, Vice President for Mission and Identity, but prior to that served for 10 years as Director of Campus Ministry. And as I listen to the memories, so many of them are still alive. Christmas on the Hill is still the high point of our year. I mean, there is just nothing to compare with the magic of Christmas on the Hill. We prepare, it's just a phenomenal event. I think, unlike Sister Vivian, I live in DeShantel in the residence hall. Now, when Sister Vivian was there, the students were coming in at 1:45 a.m. They now go out at 1:45 a.m. So it's just a little bit different. But what I find at Seton Hill is the love that has been engendered over the years for the founding community, the Sisters of Charity of Seton Hill. Those stories are told and retold, and we recently had a meeting to discuss the synodality with faculty and staff. And truly, as you listen to their stories, you would think there were still 100 sisters on that campus. That's how deeply rooted the spirit is. And it makes me feel energized and hopeful that, right now there are 3 of us actively involved at the Hill. But that spirit is never, ever going to diminish because we have so many students, faculty, staff who are committed to our mission. And that's what gives me so much hope for the future, because this is not the end of the stories. I mean, they're going to go on and on and on. So it's just a wonderful, I'm really, obviously, I'm not 25. So I expect to end my years of active ministry at Seton Hill. And it's such a gift to be able to be there and to walk on the shoulders of the great women on the panel, but the great women who sacrificed for this institution, which we all love. So thank you all for joining us, and thanks to our panelists for helping us to remember those wonderful memories that continue to be made.
Thank you so much, Sister Mari. Sister Patrice Hughes, please share.
I started going to Seton Hill when I was about 7. The sisters did not drive at that time, and so they needed, and they all came home in the summer for retreat, and some stayed. And so my father, or if he was engaged at the hospital, he would get his brother or a friend. And so going up the drive, I thought, oh, someday I hope to come here. Well, several years later, I decided not only to attend Seton Hill, but I thought maybe I might like to be a sister of charity. So when I asked my father, he said, no, you go to Seton Hill, that's wonderful. And then after you get your diploma, you can go to the Sisters of Charity. So I told the sisters who were teaching me in high school, I'm not allowed to go. Well, they went to visit my father in his office. And at dinner, he said to me, I'll see you in my bedroom at the end of the meal. So I was examining my conscience, and I thought, I don't know what I did. So he said, the sisters came to my office. You know, I can't say no to the sisters. So he said to me, however, if you go, you stay. So he never asked me if I was happy or satisfied until I had made final vows. He wanted to make certain I was staying. But the wonderful thing when I was choosing courses at that time, Seton Hill was liberal arts. This is back in the 50s. And but I wanted to teach little children. And so I wanted to get a degree in education. And the sister in charge of our education, Father Marie Benedict, said to me, science or language. Well, I had discovered in high school that Seton Hill being a liberal arts college, you wouldn't have to take a science in college if you took 4 in high school. So I was very happy to escape that. And so I thought, oh no. I said, oh no, Mother. I'm an English major and a social studies minor. She said, did you hear me? Take your seat. So I went back to my seat and I said to the sister who was next to me in the community, what did she say to you? And she stood up and she said, I'm going to do Greek, Latin, and French. I wanted to punch her, but we weren't. She said, come and do French with me. That was the most wonderful gift. Sister Leah, who was the teacher, she was unbelievable. The care that she extended. When we were sent out to teach, before we finished our degree, she would have us come home on Friday evening. She would have a class for us Friday evening, and then Saturday morning. And before we went back to our assignment, she would go over the lesson plans for us. And I remember I was assigned to Holy Innocents in Sheridan, and the sister whose place I took just had her doctorate. And the kids one day said to another sister, boy, is it good to have a sister who knows what she's doing in French. Oh my. Anyway, I really enjoyed that. And then I taught for many, many years.
Thank you, Sister Patrice. Now, Sister Patrice mentioned Sister Leah Wolf, who I know many sisters and alums certainly maybe their favorite professor. So one question I have is, which colleague, professor, or administrator from Seton Hill had the greatest influence on you, and why?
I would certainly have to say Sister Leah, who is one of my very best friends in all the world, but was also a great teacher and mentor to me, and just a really fun person to be around. So, also though, I thought Sister Muriel, who was then the Dean of Administration, whatever that was, she just was a very calm, unflappable person. You know, nothing seemed to rattle her too much, and I thought, boy, it'd be nice to be like that. But she was just really very, very lovely. I was impressed by her, and I hope I learned a few lessons from her in being an administrator.
I thought about Sister Muriel myself, and when I would see her, I would often say to her, when I grow up, I want to be just like you. And she would just, in all humility, say, well, tell me why. But I also thought about Sister Morris, who had a reputation for being pretty tough, but she recognized her students. She was an outstanding leader, recognized in Harrisburg for her work with children, recognized actually all over the world as I came to know her. It was because of her that I began my career in psychology. And so I must admit there were many tough days, but I really admired her. And the other person was Dwight Troutman. For those of you who remember Dwight, he was one of the first lay faculty members that we had. He was an elder in his church. I think he was in the Lutheran church, I'm not sure. But he headed our education department for many years and imbued the spirit and the charism of the Sisters of Charity at Seton Hill, and would have done anything for the students. and for the faculty, and especially the Sisters of Charity.
Well, my first love was when I was in grade school with Sister Jean Ann. She did things that no other sister ever did. When we were reading a story, she would have us write it into a play, and she would put us in charge of directing and putting on the play. And I learned so much just learning how to be myself there. And by that time, I'm a raving extrovert, but at that time I was a bit shy. And I believe that she helped to take me out of myself to somewhere else. And then I went to high school and I met Sister Leah. And she actually was the proctor of my entrance exam. And if you remember, Sister Leah had a lazy eye. And at that time, she had a lot of trouble with her skin. And I went home and I said to my mother, oh, the sister that took care of our test was so nice, but she had a funny eye. And so I went on to school and I met Leah, and I never after that saw her eye or her skin or anything. I just saw a wonderful, wonderful sister. And about 2 weeks into school, my mom said, well, where is the sister that did your entrance exam? I said, she must have been changed because I haven't seen her at school at all. And it was Sister Leah. So I have many other sisters that are favorites to me, but I guess they're my two favorites.
Well, Sister Leah was my sponsor when I entered the community because she was floor nun on our floor when I was the first summer that I was at Seton Hill. And she was probably the only one I knew at that time. But I met Jacinta Mann, who was Sister Jacinta at the time. And Jacinta served when I came back from graduate school from the Ohio State University in 1985, I think. She said to me, Vicki, I would like you to be able to take over my statistics classes. So this is what I'd like you to do. You come to my class every day. Now, I was teaching 4 classes in the home economics department at the time. She said, but come to my class, and then we'll talk about it after class, what happened. And that went on for a whole 2 semesters. Not 1, but 2, because she wanted to be sure I was going to be a good statistics professor. And then she said, now next year, you're going to teach one of the sections, and we'll use the same syllabus. And every day after class, we would go over that. So she mentored me, and by the time I left, I was teaching 2 and 3 sections of statistics before I retired. But and Jacinta was one of those people that stayed a friend all the rest of my life. Sister Rose Angela was my mentor when I first went into the department. The sisters there, one of the sisters there was afraid that I might be taking over her area, and I wasn't. But I would set up the labs and the foods labs, and in the morning I'd go down and things weren't there anymore. And Sister Rose Angela went after her and said, this can't go on. She's going to be here for a while. I was there 48 years, of course. But Sister Rose Angela not only was a friend, but she was not only a mentor, but she was my friend up until the day she died. I was holding her when she was dying. And the other person I think that was so important to me, like Sister Grace, was Sister Marx. One time we were on what do they call it when you get accreditation? The Middle States. We were on a Middle States committee, and I was chairing the committee, and Morris was on the committee. And she went to Eileen Farrell and said to her, this sister has more talents and we're wasting it. She needs to get her doctorate. And I had been at Seton Hill for almost 20 years by then. And she said, she needs to get her doctorate. And Eileen called me into her office and said, Sister Morris thinks that you could do more for this university. So she said, you have a 3-year leave of absence without pay and be back. And I went to Ohio State and I got my doctorate and I came back, and that's how I got to meet Kirsten and a few other people who are still faithful to Seton Hill.
A few other folks I just want to mention, maybe spark some memories. Sister Mary Leon Betway. Do we remember Sister Mary Leon? Sister Regina Clare. And who was the other Clare that we had in that department? Teresa Clare. Sister Mildred Corby. Sister Gemma was also teaching.
Sister Miriam Joseph.
Sister Miriam Joseph Murphy, yes, many a story about Sister Miriam Joseph. Sister Mary Frances Urban. Deborah Kelly, many, I know many alums and sisters have talked about Sister Deborah Kelly. Sister DeChantal, of course now DeChantal Hall is named after her. Sister Mary Ronald Madden was in the library in the 70s. And of course the McManama sisters, sisters. Helen Muha, Sister Helen Muha. So many alums, music department, talk so much about Sister Helen. And of course we have an institution here in the audience, Sister Ann Infanger, of course, is often spoken of by alums and sisters and many folks at Seton Hill. So do we have any, Sister Frances Stefano, Sister Barbara Ann Smelko, and Sister Lois Skolko are just a few others that come to mind. Dorothy Jacko, Sister Dorothy Jacko as well in the theology department. Do any of those names ring a bell? Do you have some good stories about any of those sisters? Anybody in the audience too, certainly. Sister Martine.
I was a music major, so I want to give a shout out to all the music professors, to Helen and Mother Richard Ann and Aunt Agnes and Miriam David, all those pioneers. They were wonderful women and so committed to their major students. But anyway, I have a story about Helen Muha. I was taking voice lessons, and Helen was trying to share with me the importance of proper breath control and diaphragm control, diaphragm strength. And we were in the parlor, and Helen said to me, and she was Miriam Cecilia then, "Now watch this, sister." And she tightened up her diaphragm. "I can push this baby grand piano." And she did. And the diaphragm. And I was like, I'm never going to be able to do that. But when we say they were women of strength, they were women of strength.
That's a great story, Sister Maureen. New to me, so I'll have to remember that. Yes, we have Monica.
So my memories of the Sisters of Charity start well before.
Take your mask off.
Well before I came to Seton Hill, because Father Tom. What happened? Because Father Tom Bertolino was sent to New Elik, which was the parish where I grew up, and Father Tom had been here on campus for a long time. So Father Tom signed me in here against my will when I was 16. I was told, "You're going to Seton Hill, we're going to straighten you out." Okay? but when I came up here, my senior year, and my best friend came with me, and she too went to Seton Hill eventually, he sent me with a list of questions. And the questions went like this: Sister Mary Financial Aid, and then there'd be a question, which was Jean Boggs, I think at the time. Sister Mary Library, Sister Mary Cafeteria. And he made me, he said, "You have to ask all those questions." And they were the silliest questions. And everyone played along like it was serious. It was hysterical. So when the Tribune and Review came out and they took a picture that day, it is a picture of me holding the questions, Sister Jean, and my best friend Mary Jo in the picture. I mean, to this day, to me, it's funny because, these were all just inside jokes of Seton Hill that Father Tom was playing on all of you. But yeah, I still thank him every day. I still remember his birthday every year. It's a day before mine. It makes it easy. But he certainly did change my life, so I guess I have to thank him for signing me in here at 16.
Thank you for sharing. And I remember Sister Mary Bookstore is another one. Sister Marie. I have actually a Monica Stinchola story. From 5 years ago.
It's not my fault.
When her class celebrated a significant anniversary in DeChandra Hall. Do you remember that?
How can I forget?
I actually set up a little scenario with campus police to come and to raid them. And it was quite an event. And Monica was kind of scared and kind of not knowing what to do when the campus police came in to take her away. But as a reward for adding to the levity of the evening, Monica presented me with a lovely bottle of Grey Goose gin. And they're still part of it in my freezer. But I had heard about Monica Stinchola from Sister Lois, this famous and infamous, and I had the wonderful opportunity to have that encounter with her. And I must say, enjoyed a few great gin and tonics.
You know, it's very interesting that students were sent to Seton Hill to get straightened out because the sisters were quite rebellious and still are. Sister Louise?
Well, I'd like to mention the nurses that I knew. Sister Amata, I know that most of you are too young to remember her going through
White
the
flash.
passage, but she was known as the White Flash. She walked at about 1 inch a minute, and you walked behind her, you did not pass her. And then she came to the diet kitchen for her lunch, and she walked around the stove the same way and held up the trays. But she was the nurse for years, and she had certain remedies, not the kind that a nurse would give you today, anyway. Amata was, and then Sister Agnes Teresa, who was a nurse there for not nearly as long, but the kindest, absolutely the kindest lady. And she also could really play a piano. She played by ear, and she sang all kinds of strange songs. She taught us one about a poor old slave who went to rest, and then she'd sing it in all kinds of languages, well, English, but it turned out differently. But they were great ladies and kept us happy when things were kind of hard. So.
And we could also add Sister Marie Stephen, who was there for many years as our nurse, and Sister Isabel Jordan, who was also the nurse there. I don't remember who came after Isabel.
Person. Behind lady. Sister Marie Stevens sent me to court because the day I was accepted into the community, we only had one phone on 3rd and Mid. And the phone was down by her room at the far end, like the zeros, and I was in 313. I'm in 313 now at Caritas Christi, by the way. And I yelled at my 6 roommates that I had been accepted, and I had broken study hour. And I went to student court because Sister Marie Stephen made sure that we were quiet during study hour.
Let's not forget Sister Mary Janet Ryan.
Yes. She's another institution. Well, sisters, we've been very sentimental, a little bit funny, but I want to know the origin of some of these campus mischief. And I know Sister Vivian may be able to talk about this, but the St. Elizabeth Ann Seton statue on campus has gone through many a change over the years. Can you talk about any instances at the campus? Anybody?
Oh, I'd love to talk about how during my tenure as Dean of Students, which was not my favorite time, but a wonderful opportunity to get to know students in a new way. But Elizabeth was so fondly loved and still is. And she appeared in costumes for every event. So at Halloween, she had all kinds of stuff on her. For graduation, she had her cap and gown. For Christmas, she had a halo or whatever, but there wasn't one event that she wasn't dressed up. And I recall some of the sisters would say, well, you know, you have to, that's disrespectful. And I would say, no, it shows that they know she's there and they love her. And so we protected her, and so did the students.
Thank you, Sister Grace.
She was also one of the best teachers.
Thank you, Sister Anita. Sister Anita just said
Phenomenal.
she was one of the best teachers. Yes, I'll take this to you, Sister Anita.
Well, I guess I'm one of the very different students Seton Hill ever had. But I started Seton Hill in January. I came to Seton Hill in January. I had just graduated from high school the week before. But anyway, I came to Seton Hill, and they didn't have the schedule finalized. So we were just kind of put into classes for a while, and I ended up in economics. Well, I sat there and I listened for a while, and I thought, oh, this isn't going to be for me. But anyway, we were told, please write a paragraph. Why are you taking economics? Well, I looked at them like they had two heads. Who said I'm taking economics? I came to Seton Hill to play in the nursery school. And that's what I wrote.
Thank you, Sister. Yes. Oh, Sister Ann, of course, yes. Sister Ann Infanger.
Sister Florence Marie Scott was a tremendous science person. Sister Florence Marie Scott. And she had spent two semesters over in Naples, Italy, doing embryology research. And she was tremendous. Promotion of science. And her best friend was Mother Victoria. And Mother Victoria was a wonderful woman too. And so Florence Marie, as this embryologist, and then Mother Victoria is just a wonderful lady. And so those are ones that I recommend. By the way, Natalie Carbone passed away this week. And she worked on this atomic submarine. And I saw an interview on television of Natalie Carbone a year ago. And she said that the thing she was most proud of wasn't the submarine that was atomic, but was her children. So she was, anyway, that was impressive to me that she was so devoted to her children.
Thank you, Sister Ann. Yes, Sister Florence Marie Scott, really known all over the country for her work. Natalie Carbone Mangini, another local female scientist. So we've got a lot of wonderful women of science to be proud of.
I can't let this pass. Sister Mary Janet was my sponsor in the community. I first met her in high school. And as good little kids, you know, we came before school started and washed the desks and helped pass out books and so on. And Janet was dressed in it's still the old habit, but this long white apron. And she said to us, well, I'm the infirmarian. And we believed her. I mean, Sister Savage. She wasn't the infirmarian at all. She just had that apron on because she was working. But she was full of fun. She loved to dress up. She loved Halloween. She dressed up every Halloween and in some get-up. She could still do the Charleston when she was in her 80s. She was great, a very interesting teacher, and really encouraged us to read other things and explore history, and she was a great lady. I miss her.
So we've talked about some wonderful people at Seton Hill, faculty, students, staff, and we talked about too, Christmas on the Hill being a wonderful tradition. But sisters, do you think, what kind of event or moment at Seton Hill do you think the Setonian values have been most apparent to you?
I think when Joanne Boyle died, and she was still the president, and the students, when the hearse was bringing her coffin up the hill, the students lined the hill to greet her home.
That's very powerful. Thank you, sister.
I thought immediately about how our whole Seton Hill family gathered at 9/11 when we had 2 students on that flight 93 who died coming home from Lockerbie. And it was a traumatic event, and no one resisted doing anything for the Saracenes or the Johnsons. And people gathered in a variety of ways. The students gathered, the faculty gathered, the staff gathered. But it was truly the charism alive at the university at a very difficult time in our history.
I remember that day too. It was the first time that the faculty had moved into St. Joseph Hall, and we had planned to have an open house, and Joanne made sure that we would have something on every single floor for everybody. And I walked into my office, and Paul Mahady came into my room, and he said, "Sister, we're not going to have an open house today." I said, "Why not?" He said, "I can't tell you, just go over." And there was only one television on campus outside the Dean of Students' office in Morrow Hall. And I went over and I saw one of the towers go down. And at that point, I called Darren. You know, Darren's always very amenable to anything that we have to do. And I said, "Darren, we're canceling. I don't know what we're going to do with what we had." He said, "Sister, thank you, because I have all those refreshments and we'll be serving students all day today." And we sat on the lawn at Seton Hill, outside Sullivan Hall, for hours at a time, just praying. It went on all day, because we knew that we had 2 students who had been on that flight. It was a sad day. We had mass on, we had mass, everything went on, but it was so somber.
Thank you, Sister. Anyone? Sister Ann?
Sister Ann knows something.
The Johnsons, who lost their daughter, and they continue to finance the children's program, right? And summer program for
Seton Arts. Seton Arts
doing
program.
that, using money that they got from the tragedy. They still do that. So,
Yes, the Sisters of the University have a wonderful program called Seton Arts Service Corps that serves students in the area with arts programs. So a wonderful legacy of that family, those 2 families actually. Okay, sisters. So sort of in connection to that, we've talked today about how Seton Hill is really a family, right? It's like home. Through hard times, through funny times, good times, you grow up. The sisters have grown up there. The students have grown up there. What does the Sisters of Charity's connection to the university mean to you?
I'll begin. I really, Sister Maureen already mentioned this, how alive the charism is. And I've had, through Sister Vivian and Sister Maureen, I've been invited to share about the Sisters of Charity Federation of which I'm a part now. And with every gathering of faculty and staff, it is so evident that that spirit is alive. And during my most recent experience with Sister Maureen invited me at the end of this term, and it was a wonderful group of faculty and staff. And one of the things when I was talking about the history of the Sisters of Charity at Seton Hill, at the end, one of the faculty members, or several of them said, that is so, the spirit is so alive. It goes all the way back to Elizabeth Seton and then they took it to the current day because they were going into a Senate meeting to talk about a very difficult decision and how they would try to, share that history with the faculty. And one of the staff people said, and it's the end of the year for our students. And to think about how the sisters cared about the students all those years, that's how we care about them now, especially as they're preparing for finals. They're in great anxiety and stress, the unknowns of the future, going home to whatever in COVID times. I was almost in tears several times with how that charism, how it just will live on forever, even without us as Sisters of Charity on the faculty and staff.
Recently, we've had two groups of faculty at the end of a course that they've been taking at Seton Hill called The Journey with Elizabeth. And they come at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, or 3:30, the end of the day. And we show them all through the archives and all of the memorabilia, and we talk about that, and we take them in to the record room, and they're in no hurry to leave. They have hundreds of questions. And at the end of an hour or an hour and a half, we say, well, you've been here now, and you can come at any time, and so on. They still are not in a hurry to leave. Now that is a different situation than the usual thing when you are orienting people to something. They like, oh, it's nice, but when are you going to be done? They're not like that. They stay, and even as they leave, 2 or 3 would come back and have another question or another idea or something. So I think that indicates that more has happened than just a history course or something to know. It's like something that's part of their everyday being. So that's just my observation.
This past week, I had to take one of our sisters who has Alzheimer's to Westmoreland Hospital for an MRI. And I had, because of where the laboratory was scheduled, I had to get an escort to help me. And after the test was over, they called for another escort to take us back up to where I could take her out to the car. And the young man who was the escort was a wonderful young man. He said to me, "You're Sisters of Charity, aren't you?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "You know, I go to Seton Hill." And I said, "Oh." And he said, "And you're the chaplain for the women's basketball team." And I said, "How do you know that?" He says, "I'm on the football team and we support the women's basketball team." He said, "The sisters, you aren't any sisters there anymore, but the ones that are there are wonderful." And he said, "It's great to see that." And then he went on and he said he could tell that the sister who was with me was having trouble and she needed to stop to go to the restroom. And he said, "Doesn't matter. I'm going to be here all night." She can take as long as she wants. but he said, "It's so great to be at Seton Hill because the sister spirit is still there, even though there aren't very many sisters there anymore.
Thank you, sisters. Yes, Sister Marnie.
I think that the charism will live forever, but in order for that to happen, we have to have strong leadership that's committed to our charism. And I think we can all be grateful from the time of Mother Mary Joseph Havey, who was the first president, and certainly to Dr. Mary Finger. All of those men and women have been committed to the sisters and to our charism. And I think it's really important as we choose leadership down the line that those leaders have that commitment to who we are and to continuing that. But I think Sister Vivian would have to, I think you would agree with me, you can do all the work in the world as the Vice President for Mission, but if you don't have the support of the President and the President's Council, I mean, forget it. You really need that, and I think that has really been a blessing for us in maintaining the relationship between the sisters and the university. We're not two separate, we're one.
Thank you, Sister. Monica?
So last evening I had dinner with the student that I mentor as part of that block scholarship program. I forget the endowment's full name, so please forgive me for that. But what we were talking about, I was telling her about all the social justice things we did. The fact that, Sister Lois had me out passing out buttons about boycotting table grapes and iceberg lettuce for Mexican farm workers when I'm growing up in a dairy farm community in Pennsylvania. I mean, it's really hysterical if you think about it. But it was all that social justice that you all instilled in us. And how do we take that and instill that into the young students that are here today? How do we take what you've done? Because it's more of our DNA as the products of your education. How do you take that and turn that into what they're facing today with gun violence and everything else? And I think that's the challenge. How are we going to do that? How are we going to make sure that they get that same gun experience that we got last century? So I hope we're up to the challenge to do it. We spent 2 hours talking about it last night. It's fabulous.
Thank you for sharing. And, to me, I think about St. Elizabeth Ann Seton and founding her community in Emmitsburg and sending sisters out, and all the sisters who went now around the world. Seton Hill is similar. We had the sisters create the foundation here in Greensburg, and you have sent thousands of students out into the world, around the world. And just as Monica mentioned, it's really up to those students and the faculty and staff whose lives and souls have been touched by the sisters and their legacy to continue this charism, to carry on that legacy. So now we have a little bit of time, so we will open it up to anybody who would like to share additional memories or stories of their time at Seton Hill. Sisters, certainly if you have something more you would like to share, we have time for that.
I'd like to build on Monica's comment about the students, because one of the gifts of we have on the Board of Trustees is to meet with the students for lunch when we have our meetings. And it's always a highlight of the time together, because I think what we're hearing from our current students is very much what you're sharing. I'd also like to add, I think that the National Center for Holocaust Education, since Sister Gemma cannot be here, is really a witness to that whole area of what we believe in. And I also in the Federation we have what we call a House of Charity in New Orleans, and we invite students from colleges and universities to come and visit with the sisters and do service work. And the sisters in the house are from different congregations of charity. And Sister Vivian was there at a time, for a time, and And before COVID, though, right before COVID, we had a group of Seton Hill students who could articulate and understand the charism, as the sisters told me, better than any group of students that they had. So I think it's there. It's coming through the faculty, as Sister Maureen says, through the president on, through the faculty and staff, and it's there. It's still there. It's different, but it's there.
Thank you, Sister Grace. Sisters, anything else to share? Anybody else in the audience would like to share anything? No? Well, thank you all so much. It's been wonderful to be with you and to share your stories. A very special thank you to our guests, Sister Grace Hartzog, Sister Victoria Marie Gribshaw, Sister Vivian Lee Heller, and Sister Louise Grundish.
And Casey Bowser.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. We hope you've all enjoyed tea and story time with the Sisters of Charity, and we look forward to seeing you at other events throughout this alumni weekend. Thank you so much for coming. Have a great day. Yeah. Thank you. Please stay and enjoy your tea and snacks.